Hello there, Ben Bowers, the Spirit Specialist, and I'm here today to talk to you about came out a couple of weeks ago, so relatively new release from Ardnamurchan. It's the AD 0622, because it came out in June of 2022, Paul Launois release. So this is the second Paul Launois batch. The first came out, oh God, when did it come out? 2020? Because it was just as I was opening and I wasn't able to get any stock because they'd already been allocated. But fortunately I did manage to get not a lot of this. And you'll notice that the top is off of this one. And the reason that is because I'm going to try it to do this video, but I'm also going to decant the rest of this into another New Kids on the Lock box. So you might remember this earlier on in the year, of which I still have 2 or 3 of these left. So it's a sample selection pack of new releases, and the voucher that you get inside for £5 off your next purchase has just fallen out as well. But you do get a voucher in that as well, because I'll probably do it on the same one. And it's new releases, limited edition releases, where literally I didn't get that many bottles and so many people wanted them that I basically took the liberty of decanting some into a box which allows more people to try them. Rather than it risking one full bottle going to somebody who might flip it and just make a quick buck, I'd much rather 20 odd people instead got the chance to try them. So this is the first one that I did, which was spring 2022. And in here we've got the Lockley Sowing Edition, we've got Daft Mill, we've got 1972 Blended Grain, first release from Wireworks, the amazing Gordon MacPhail Spain Malt Macallan 2002 Cask Strength, and the Ben Rommett Cara Gold. So I'm going to do another box. I'm going to decant them after doing this video, which is going to have the Paul Launois, we've got the new Wireworks small batch, we've got the new release Filey Bay Peated Finish batch 2, we've got an Ardbeg Ardcore going in there, the new batch 2 from Glenwivis, and I've got the bottles up there. Oh, the Nickney Huntress, which is the other limited edition one as well. So that's the reason for opening this, but it also means that I can do a review video of it as well. So before I tell you what this tastes like, let me give you some background info in Ardnamurchan, if you've not seen any of the other Ardnamurchan release videos that I've done, and also Paul Launois. Who or what is Paul Launois? The Ardnamurchan Distillery is the most westerly distillery on the mainland of Scotland, sitting on a remote 50 square mile peninsula with a single track road being the only access in and out. The distillery itself was opened in 2014 and is owned by Adelphi Distillers. Jamie Walker founded Adelphi in 1993. His grandfather Archibald was previously an owner of the Loch Katrine Adelphi Distillery, which opened in 1826 on the banks of the River Clyde. The business was eventually purchased by Keith Falconer and Donald Houston in 2003, and it was in 2007 that the first steps were taken to open a brand new distillery, as demand for Scotch whisky began to indicate it would be harder to source casks independently. Ardnamurchan produces both peated and unpeated spirit, using natural colour and no chill filtration. Champagne Paul Launois is a young wine producer based in Mesnil-sur-Oger, 150 kilometres east of Paris. Created by husband and wife team Julien and Sarah Launois, they were the third generation of a family selling grapes to a village cooperative, who then decided to produce their own champagne, with their first vintage being released in 2015. Already growing a great reputation, Paul Launois partnered with Ardnamurchan to supply a number of 195 litre wine barriques, into which unpeated whisky distilled in 2015 and originally matured in first fill ex-Bourbon barrels was re-racked for a period of finishing, but the exact timescale of that finish isn't known, although it's assumed around 6 months or so. 2,661 bottles were released at 57.5% ABV, with no colouring added and no chill filtration taking place. Okay, so we are looking at essentially a champagne cask finish, which is really quite interesting, and you kind of don't tend to get anywhere. You know, wine cask finishes in whiskey as a whole tend to be red wine, and they do tend to work really well. And what I do find is red wine casks and heavily peated whiskey, or just peated whiskey in some form or another, is a fantastic combination, personally speaking, for me. But you don't often get white wine casks, and the ones that I have come across have kind of struggled. It's that kind of dry, grapey wininess of a white wine, that drier edge. Sort of, for me, I struggle to get it to work with whiskies as a whole. What was it? The Glenmorangie Chardonnay cask. Admittedly, I did have it quite a while ago, but it tasted like I'd had a glass of wine, there was some dregs left in the bottle, you put a whiskey on top of it and it didn't really balance. But interesting to see what this does. Now, as I said, red wine, peated whiskey for me personally works really well. What we have here is essentially a white wine cask and unpeated Ardnamurchan. So already there's a bit of a risk that it's not going to work for me, but Ardnamurchan is one of my favourite distilleries. It's been consistently brilliant since they first launched. As a new distillery, it's up there with the likes of Brasse for complexity at such a young age. I'm continually surprised at how good they are making their spirit at such a young age. And, you know, I do wonder how much better it can get, how far it can go, and where that age is going to be where it starts to tail off. Is it actually going to be quite early? Are we going to find like Ardnamurchans after maybe 12, 15 years actually don't improve because they've already got that much to give and there's nothing else there? So it'll be very, very interesting to see how Ardnamurchan develops over time. But the Paul Launois. Now, I sadly missed out, as I said earlier, on the first release. And I never got a chance to try the first release either. So I don't really know kind of what to expect from this. I'm just expecting something a bit different. So let's go straight into it. Let's go on the nose. Light, very fruity. There's a touch of honey on there, but there's apples, there's kind of almost overripe, no, not overripe, underripe banana. Yeah, that's slightly, it's not quite turned yellow yet. Underripe banana, but there's apples. There is a kind of grapiness in there as well, like a white grape note. There's a spiciness to it as well. There's an underlying soft spice note of definitely cinnamon, but quite dry cinnamon, not a sweet cinnamon feel. And it smells quite juicy. It's very unusual nose. Quite light, clearly no smoky element on there at all. But it smells light and fresh, but still kind of warm with that orchard fruit note that's coming through there as well. Just that little touch of spice is just lifting everything, making everything a little bit interesting. Okay, let's see what it's like on the palate. Now, this is bottled at cask strength, so we are looking at 57.5% ABV. Oh, blimey. That is quite hot. That is, this instantly for me is, I'm thinking, I'm definitely going to need to add some water to this. There's a very much a heat going around my mouth. It's very alcohol forward. Now, there is underneath that a continuation of what was on the nose. There is this, it's a very, very fruity, but it's quite, there's a sweetness to it as well, but it's not sweet fruit. So there's apples, but they're golden delicious apples. There's that underripe banana feel. There's grapiness in there. There is an effervescence, and it may be just subconsciously I'm going, well, it's from champagne glass, it must be bubbly. But but I think that's the alcohol heat is giving this effervescence, this quite intense prickle kind of around my mouth and on my tongue. But there's a sort of there's a sweetness that's not sugary sweet, but it's like candies. It's like hard candies. It reminds me of, now, they're an American sweet, but they did come over here briefly, and I can't remember what the name of what we had when they were in the UK. Jolly Ranchers, but we also had, and it's more of like a 70s, it was slightly before my time. 70s and 80s, there was a hard candy kind of that were squares, and I can't remember what they were. All I've got in my head is Starburst, which they aren't that because that's the new name for opal fruits, and they are like chewy, but there is I'm gonna have to stop. Oh, sorry about that. I had a delivery driver that wasn't going to go away, so I've had to take it in. Anyway, so there is this juicy candy feel, but it feels like a hard candy. It's slightly mouth-watering, but the alcohol content is just overpowering, just a little bit too much, which kind of surprises me. It's not that it's unbalanced. It feels almost like they've slightly kind of just not done it by mistake. It doesn't feel like it's deliberate that they've put it at that high alcohol content, but we'll see. Maybe it is just it's cask strength, and so I'm going to put some drops of water in. Maybe it's just it's cask strength, that's what it's come out at, but I'm not going to put a lot in. I've not got a lot in my glass, and because it feels quite, there's a light sweetness to it. This is not a deep whiskey, which is again kind of slightly different to what other Ardnamurchans have got. I really like the kind of the depth, the complexity, the rich feel of the core bottling, the batches that we've had up to now, the peated element. This feels lighter, so I don't want to put too much water in this because I feel it's not going to take much to get it to the right level before you then start to over dilute it. So I've not put much in. This may have knocked it down to roughly 50%. I didn't put a lot in. Let's see how we go with this. That's better. It's still got a bit of a bite. There's a tiny little fly around here as well. Bugger off. It still has a bit of a bite, but it's working much better with the rest of the palate here. And it's allowing those fruity flavors to come through. Again, I'm getting that kind of hard candy. It's quite mouth-watering. There's a kind of, there's grape and there's apple, and having added water to it, it's turned the apple from what was golden delicious, not quite Granny Smith's, but kind of halfway between the two. It's just a little bit more pronounced. That banana-iness is still there, but it's again mouth-watering, it's juicy, it's very, very fruit-forward. There's not a huge amount on the finish, but what there is lingering pleasantly, but it's one of those where peated elements, peated whiskey sort of will naturally make the finish longer because you've got that smoky element that, and I find personally, I tend to find finishes on peated whiskies tend to last longer because I'm more aware of that kind of smoky element that's lingering. This, I wouldn't say it's got a long finish, I'd say maybe a medium finish, but what there is actually really, really pleasant. That spice that's on the nose is there, but not as pronounced as it was. And again, nosing it with that water, that spiciness that was kind of lifting those fruit flavors up, I think it's the alcohol content in there as well is partly due to that. It's there, it's sort of softer. It's gone from dry cinnamon to slightly sweet cinnamon, you know. Not quite cinnamon buns with icing on top, but it's a slightly sweeter cinnamon touch of nutmeg in there as well. It's a very, very fruit-forward whiskey. It's very pleasant indeed. It's quite different to every other Ardnamurchan that I've had. But I like the fact that the distillery is showing this versatility. It's very interesting. I do think I'm picking up that kind of juicy grapiness, maybe subconsciously because I know it's come from a white wine cask. Or maybe it is that, you know, it is having a clear effect of there is this winey note, but it's if I was going to do a wine, it would be something like a Riesling, that sort of slightly off dry, slightly floral is influencing the spirit that is then gone into that cask. But it works. It works really, really well. It introduces a light, fruity, juicy, kind of like this hard candy note is from, I think, the wine casks. And it's very, very interesting indeed. Do I think it's better than the standard as a sort of a limited edition release? Do I think it's better than? No, it is different too. Personally, I think I prefer the peated element that they have in their core bottlings, what is now the core. I think for me, Ardnamurchan is a kind of light to medium peated coastal Highland whiskey. This goes in a very different direction, not massively so. It's a fascinating whiskey. It's really, really interesting. But if I were to try it blind, if somebody would give me a measure of this and didn't tell me what it was, I would never have picked Ardnamurchan. I'd just say, this is something really, really interesting. What is it? I don't honestly think I could pick what distillery it was from, which is kind of a good thing because it's standing on its own accord. It's not copying another distillery. But it's not it's not Ardnamurchan because I have this in my head, this Ardnamurchan house style, which has that peated element. But as something different, as something interesting, as something almost as an experiment, I think it's absolutely fascinating. And if you like whiskies that are doing something slightly unusual, something odd, something different, something a bit quirky, this is absolutely worth getting hold of. If you can get your hands on it, which is part of the problem. It's another one of these, it's a limited edition run, everybody wants it, it gets absolutely snapped up. I ended up running a ballot for it, so you can't buy this through the website because I've already sold out. I didn't get many, the few that I did, one of them is going in the box, the other 5, I balloted out, I went to the mailing list and said who is interested, and I had nearly 40 requests for a bottle. So that's the state of play that it is at the moment. So, you know, if you are not on my mailing list, then it's worth joining it, because that means that you will get heads up about limited editions and you might get a chance of being able to purchase a bottle. You'll get even more of a chance if you can come into the shop and collect it, and you'll get even more of a chance if you've bought from me previously, and not just limited edition stuff either. You support my business, you've got a better chance of being able to get limited edition things like this. But if you've not been able to get your hands on it and you do want to try it, and I do recommend that you do, it will be in the summer edition. I've not put the boxes together yet, this is the older one, the summer edition of the New Kids on the Lock. So it should be in the next couple of days after I've put this video up. You will be able to purchase these. And again, I'll probably go to the mailing list first and say the boxes are ready, who wants one? They will get essentially first refusal, and then whatever's left will go onto the website. So head to www.spiritspecialist.com. There is a button on the bottom that says, I can't remember what it says, keep me in touch or subscribe to my mailing list or whatever. There is a bottom at the button. There is a button at the bottom of every page which you can click, put your email details in, and then it will go on the mailing list. I do the emails, they're not automated. It's me and a MailChimp because I've got too many people on the mailing list now, as and when I've got something interesting. I'm not barraging people with emails every single day of, oh, we've got this, oh, we've got this. If it's something interesting, if it's something new, if it's a tasting event, you will get advance notice, so it's well worth signing up to that. And I'm the one that do it, so you're not gonna get spammed. And if you are getting spammed, let me know, because I'm the one writing them and sending them out. So that's me done. Highly recommend that. Really, really interesting. And Ardnamurchan knock it out of the park again. They're just brilliant. I absolutely love them. So that's me done. I shall see you at the next video. Cheers.